Hey there everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our RANT series. Today's rant is kind of inspired by an appearance I made on Jeff Young's Music Without Boundaries show a couple weeks back. That's jeffyoungjams.com. Check it out if you missed the episode, where we basically talked about kind of like concert stub memories, right? So what we did was Jeff and I both went through our big stack of concert ticket stubs from back in the day and picked out a handful of really memorable shows, more talking about the bands, right, and the shows themselves. Today I'm going to kind of do a little spin on that. So thanks to Jeff for that inspiration. I'm going to take it kind of another step further here, and I'm going to talk about concert experiences in general. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my big, thick ticket stub book, and I'm going to just kind of look through, and I haven't done this ahead of time, all right? This is going to totally be on the fly, and I'm going to just kind of look through my ticket stubs, and I'm going to kind of tell little stories of some funny instances and funny experiences, or just cool experiences that happened at me at concerts throughout the years, starting from when I was like 15 years old. Okay, so this should be kind of fun, little trip down memory lane. Hope you guys enjoy some of the stories. Some of them are a little crazy. Some are, kind of wild. Some are just cool for the musicality of it all and what have you. So this is the only one that I knew I was going to kick off with, right? Because it's the first show I ever saw. So we're looking at, and I'm going to use my glasses here because I'm looking at some small ticket stubs, as you can see. All right, and I'll occasionally try and show you these if I can. But the first show I ever saw, May 4th, 1981. Okay, so this was Ozzy Osbourne and Motorhead. This is the Blizzard of Oz tour at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, New York. So a notable show for a couple of reasons. First show I ever saw. Okay, huge Black Sabbath fan at the time, and a fairly, I'd been into Sabbath for a couple of years at that point. I think I got into Sabbath around 1979 or so. So, Ozzy's obviously not in Sabbath anymore. He's doing his solo thing, Blizzard of Oz tour. Got to see Randy Rhoads, right, the first tour, which was really cool. I remember my buddy and I were sitting, I think about 10 rows back or so, or 8 or 10 rows back, and we were right in front of Randy. So there he was with his polka dot Jackson V, and he had the white Gibson Les Paul. He played the custom. And it was incredible. Me being so young and what have you, 15 years old. But I remember how loud this show was, and specifically how loud Motorhead were. And I had never listened to Motorhead before at that point in time. Okay, and Lemmy was right in front of us. So here's this dude, right, with this Rickenbacker bass with the microphone coming straight down the whole time. And we were just and they were so loud. I mean, ridiculously loud. And I remember my friend and I were just kind of like, holy crap, what did we just witness? But the funny story about this whole night is that this concert almost didn't happen. So we had tickets, and I don't remember what day of the week that was or what have you, it doesn't really matter. But my father actually drove my buddy and I to the concert. So I live, at the time we were living in Goshen, New York. Concert is in Poughkeepsie, New York. So about roughly a 45-minute drive or thereabouts, just under an hour. And my father, I guess, was going to go hang out in a diner. I don't know where he went, after he dropped us off, but he was going to drop us off and pick us back up at 11 o'clock, right? I think the show started at 8 or something like that, or 7:30, whatever. And he dropped us off. My friend and I walked in the front of the Civic Center, got online, and then my buddy's like, "You got the tickets, right?" And I'm like, "No, I thought you had the tickets." Like, oh crap, we left him in the car. So we go run off the line, we go sprinting down the street, okay? And there's my father, stopped at a red light, maybe a block and a half away. And we're racing down the street, we're waving our arms, and thankfully he looked in his rearview mirror and saw us and stopped, and we were able to get the tickets. But that would have been the concert that never was, right? Because remember, this is 1981, no cell phones. No way to get in touch with him. He's going to go wherever he's going to go for the next couple hours, and we're shit out of luck there, right? So thankfully, we realized in time that we did not have the tickets, and that thankfully he stopped at that red light right down the street. So almost didn't happen. What else we got here? REO Speedwagon and the Rockets, 1981. Molly Hatchet. Okay, I actually got to see Molly Hatchet only once, and it was Jimmy Farrar, who recently passed away. That was August 1981. I've told this story before, Rainbow and the Scorpions, Madison Square Garden. June of 1982, Straight Between the Eyes tour, Blackout tour, Rainbow with the big huge eyes, shooting out the lasers, Scorpions just totally killing it, one of the best double bills I ever saw. What else we got here? Rush, Brendan Byrne Arena, 1981, December, with Rory Gallagher. All right, so this is a cool one. So this was August 22nd, 1982, Brendan Byrne Arena at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. Black Sabbath, Mob Rules tour, Ronnie James Dio, my first time seeing Sabbath, an incredible show. Poor Johnny Van Zant opened up that concert, and the Johnny Van Zant band, and they were like kind of booed off the stage after like 20 minutes. They were actually very good, but they should have never been on that bill. I don't know why, but Sabbath took out a bunch of Southern rock bands on that tour. Not really a good choice. But anyway, the show was incredible for one. But what was really notable about this, and again, this is 1982, so I went with my brother and my brother's best friend, who I was also good friends with. And my brother's friend's father actually drove us down to New Jersey and dropped us off. Okay, and I remember specifically, he drops us off at one of the gates, right? And this was a heavy drinking crowd. So people are like rampaging around the parking lot, drinking beers and bottles of Jack and throwing shit all over the place. And some group of kids had like a giant wooden cross out by their car, and they lit it on fire. And then they put it in one of the dumpsters. So this thing was like flaming away and smoking away. And I remember specifically the look on my brother's friend's father. He was like, what is going on here? And he like did not want to leave his son and his son's friends at this place. I could tell he was just like, I'm going to regret this. Something bad is going to happen, which it didn't. We had a great time. It was one of the most memorable shows I've ever seen. But I just remember, just imagine if you're like, and this, God, how old was he? He must have been at the time. He must have been like, in his 40s or something, right? And he's probably thinking, what is going on here? Like, to him, a scene at a Black Sabbath concert is not something he ever could have imagined. So it was pretty cool. And actually, you know what? Rush and Rory Gallagher was actually December 3rd, 1982 at Madison Square Garden. So I'm trying to remember who opened up for Rush in 1981. I don't remember. Oh, it was Riot. That's who. Okay. Triumph and Saxon, the Palladium, New York City. February 1982, we got The Who. Okay, here's another good one. So The Who at Shea Stadium. All right, this was October 12th, 1982. That was supposed to be The Who's big farewell tour, right? We're done. That's it. Last tour. So them and The Clash and David Johansen. Was he going by Buster Poindexter at the time? I don't remember. I don't think so. But anyway, I remember that show being it was just so many people there. And I remember The Who being like really not loud. Okay, and not really rocking, because at that time, Townsend was having all the hearing problems, and I think half the show he was playing like an acoustic guitar, the other half like a Telecaster, and just had all these musicians on stage. And I just don't remember it being, other than the event of it all, I don't remember it being a memorable Who show. I've seen them other times after that where I thought they were much better and totally rocking and into it. But I guess kind of cool that I saw them with Kenny Jones, right, on their first ever goodbye tour, whatever. What else we got here that's like really memorable stuff? All right, here we got Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue, and Wasted, January 22nd, 1984. $13 for the ticket, by the way. Yeah, some of these ticket prices are ridiculously low. That was kind of memorable because, again, really into Ozzy at the time. This was, of course, the Bark at the Moon tour. And huge into Ozzy. And I remember Motley Crue had just started breaking a little bit. And I was, at the time, I was pretty much into Motley Crue, and I thought they went over great at the show. This is the Shout at the Devil tour. All right, they were on top of their game, really, really good. For me, they went downhill right after that. But I also remember Wasted being really good because I was a UFO fan. All right, so of course Wasted, you had Pete Way and company. Very, very cool. What else we got here? All right, here's another good one from the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, Poughkeepsie, New York. Once again, we've got Crocus. What's the date on this? October 25th, 1984. So I was freshly a freshman at SUNY New Paltz, okay, my first semester in college. And I went to this concert with a bunch of guys I just started hanging out with at school. And this was memorable because Crocus was, at the time, kind of breaking a little bit, right? But the weird thing was, and opening the show, by the way, was White Lion, before they even had a record contract, which was kind of cool. And White Lion was great. All right, but the memorable part of the evening is like Crocus played like a really short set, like 45 minutes or an hour, if that, right? And then they announced that, okay, we're going to take a break. You're free to stay if you like, but we're going to take a break and we're going to set up some camera crews because we're going to film the Headhunter video, or we're going to film footage for the Headhunter video in a little while. Which a little while turned into like 2 hours, and by that time, like most of the people had left, but my friends and I had stayed along with probably a couple hundred other people, maybe a couple hundred, if that. I don't even think it was that many. And they brought all the camera crews in, and the band came out and played Screamin' in the Night. Okay, did I say Headhunter before? Sorry. From the Headhunter album, Screamin' in the Night, which was the single, right? They were getting ready to do a video. That was the kind of the track that was being played on the radio. And they were going to do a video for MTV. So what they did was they played the band up there. And this is a long time ago, guys, but if I remember correctly, I think the band were up there like kind of miming to the song that was played over the PA. If I remember correctly, I don't know if they were actually playing the song or not. I don't remember. Maybe they did. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But I remember they just, the camera crews and everybody there, they just basically told everybody, they directed us to just pretend like that the show is happening live, do what you normally do. So we were all like right up in the front. And at the time I was wearing, a leather jacket, and I had the studded bracelets and everything like that. And we were all up in front, and you can see all of our hands in the video doing this. The funny thing is, hardly any of that footage they shot was used in the video. Okay, the video is mainly kind of like a story type of thing with interjected little concert shots, right? Well, the concert shots were from the show that I was at. Okay, and I'm up there in the front. So kind of a cool story. One and only time I ever saw Crocus, because quite frankly, after that, I really didn't give a shit anymore. What else we got here? Kiss and Queensryche at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center again. So this is November '84, so basically the next month. This one's kind of notable for first time I'm seeing Queensryche. So this is Queensryche is just coming out, right? Just starting to make some waves. And I believe The Warning had just come out, because I know that the EP had been out for about a year. But more notable, this was Kiss on the Animalize tour. Okay, the album had a guitar player named Mark St. John, very talented player, but he developed, like, he had really bad arthritis, or maybe he had carpal tunnel, I'm not sure, one or the other, and he hardly played any shows on that tour. So they had Bruce Kulick, who would become the full-time guitar player, right, shortly after. But the Poughkeepsie show was one of the only shows, I think he played 2 or 3, that Mark St. John actually played in before he had to just kind of retire from the band. So I actually got to see one of them. It was pretty cool. But noteworthy from that show is because of his, issues with his hands, normally he would have come out to play like an extended guitar solo on his own. But instead they had Paul Stanley come out, and it was like probably the worst unaccompanied extended guitar solo I've ever heard. He just basically came out there and did this like kind of hammer-on thing, and waved to the crowd, and that's all he did. That's all he did. It was awful. Awful, but whatever. Ted Nugent and Alcatraz. Okay, this is also June of 1984. Okay, so that's a little bit earlier actually. I saw a lot of shows that year. That was pretty notable for a guy named Yngwie Malmsteen. Okay, young guy. Fresh off Steeler, he joins Alcatraz. All of a sudden, everybody's listening to Alcatraz and talking about Yngwie. Get the tour with Ted Nugent. Right before Alcatraz is set to go on stage, the curtains closed, and you hear like this classical music playing over the PA, and you hear people in the audience start going, Yngwie, 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 and then all of a sudden, out of the corner of one of the curtains, you see someone peek their head out, and it's Yngwie looking at the crowd. He's like going like this. He's got his strapped around him, and he's like, hey, and then he goes, and then he comes out, and he was so psyched to be there. He was so psyched for all the adulation, because he was a kid. He was like, I think Yngwie's only like a year older than me or thereabouts. So they're pretty funny. There's the Judas Priest show, okay, that I went to, where fans ripped up the seats and threw them all over the place. That was something to be a part of, let me tell you. You look up, and there's seat cushions flying all over the place. Pretty nuts. What else we got here? Aerosmith and Orion the Hunter, Orange County Speedway, July 5th, 1984. Kind of notable for the first and one and only time I'd ever seen Aerosmith. They just kind of all got back together after being apart for a few years. Joe Perry's back in the band. Orion the Hunter, Barry Goudreau's band from Boston. Very cool show, but like in the middle of Aerosmith's set, and it was an outdoor event. Thunder and lightning, pouring rain. And I remember like the lightning flashing across the sky, and some jerk off decided to climb one of the poles that was holding up part of the tarp or some shit like that. I don't know. All you could see is like the lightning going across the sky, and this guy up this pole. I felt like I was at Woodstock or something like that. Pretty wild. Whatever. All right, here's a great story. Okay, Black Sabbath and Quiet Riot at the Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey, October 29th, 1983. This, of course, is the Born Again tour with Ian Gillan on board. Quiet Riot, of course, is, got the whole mental health thing going on, so there was a pretty good double bill. The place was packed. Quiet Riot, I remember being very, very good. And Sabbath were great, okay? It's just, for me, because I'm a huge Purple and Sabbath fan, this was like, a perfect marriage there, right? It didn't last that long. But what was really funny about this show, so I went with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 friends, right? And we crammed all into like some little ass car, right? And one of my buddies was like 6'6", 200 and something pounds. And then we managed to fit my other friend and his girlfriend. So the 4 of us sat in the back seat. She sat laying across all of us, and the other 2 guys were in the front driving, right? And we brought down a bottle of Jack and a whole bunch of beers. And, again, we're like, this is, what year did I say this was? 83, so I'm 17 years old, right? So not exactly legal to be drinking yet, but we did it anyway. So we drank the whole way down, okay, a lot. And then we get there and we get in our seats, and we had floor seats. We had great seats, probably like maybe 20th row or something like that, the back of the floor area in the Meadowlands. But good seats nonetheless. And I remember during Quiet Riot, we're all like standing up on our chairs and we're all getting into it. So my buddy, the 6'6" guy, he probably drank more than the rest of us. And I don't know, midway during Quiet Riot, I see he's standing next to me, and then all of a sudden I see him just kind of collapse. And he falls down sitting in the chair, and he's just kind of like slumped over a little bit. I'm like, dude, get up. He's like, all right. He gets back up, and bloop, I see him disappear again. So he's obviously not doing well. So I lean over to him, and I'm like, you all right? He goes, I'm not feeling very good. I'm like, all right, you wanna go hit the bathroom or something like that? He goes, yeah, I think so. So we start, all right, so we tell everybody else we'll be right back, right? So we start walking towards the bathroom. And as we're walking, he's swaying, and he's just looks totally out of it. And I start to notice like drool coming out of his mouth, which probably wasn't drool, obviously. And I was like, oh, he's not doing well. So I go and I take him to one of the bathrooms, and I see an open stall, and I'm like, just hang out in here. If you got to get sick, which he did, and I'll come right back for you, okay? Because of course I don't want to miss the show, so. Selfish me, right? So I leave him there. I go back to my seat. They're like, oh, where is he? I'm like, oh, he's in the bathroom. He's not feeling too good. He might be getting sick. It's like, well, I'll go back and get him in a minute. And next thing you know, Quiet Riot finished their set. Intermission. Sabbath comes on. I'm totally into it. And then I'm just kind of like, I look next to me, and I'm like, oh, shit. I forgot him in there. So I'm like, I'll be right back. I forgot him in the bathroom. So, and it had been like easily a half hour, 40 minutes, right? So I go out to the lobby area, and then I'm like, holy fuck, I don't remember what bathroom I left him in. Because there's bathrooms everywhere. So I'm like, oh, Jesus. So I'm going in one bathroom. I'm looking around. I don't see him. I'm looking under the stalls. I don't see him. I go in another one. I do the same thing. I don't see him. So the third one I go in, I'm going around, and then I see his, I look under the stall. There's his sneakers. There's his pants tied around his feet. His jacket's on the floor. And I'm like, boom, boom, boom. It's like, dude, is that you? Yeah. I'm like, you all right? No. And I'm like, all right, well, we should go back to the show. So I eventually got him up, okay, back to the show. And I think he just sat in his seat, just half comatose the rest of the night. We got him home. And I think he told me it took him like 2 or 3 days to recover from that hangover. But he doesn't remember any of the show. But it happens, right? We were kids. It is what it is, right? But a great show nonetheless. What else we got here? That was Sabbath, right? Let's see. This is fun. This is fun. How about Iron Maiden and Queensryche at Radio City Music Hall, okay, January 20th, 1985, all right? One of the coldest nights I ever can remember walking around New York City, specifically going to a concert. I was there with my then girlfriend at the time and her roommate and a good buddy of mine from home. And it was so cold walking around before that show. Ridiculously cold and windy. I remember at one point we all ducked into a liquor store, and again, this is 85, so was I? I think the drinking age was 19 at the time, so I was legal at that point in time. But walked into a liquor store, and we got like a bottle of like terrible like blackberry or cherry brandy or some shit like that, and we were all just sitting in a little alley just passing around this bottle just trying to keep warm, which, as you know, doesn't work, but what did we know, right? We were young. So, but I remember that show just being ridiculously good. Queensryche, this was 85, so was this Rage for Order or The Warning? I'm thinking this was Rage for Order. I think so. No, this is Warning. I think 85 was still was it 85? Geez, I don't remember. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But Maiden were doing the whole Power Slave thing, and the stage was just ridiculously huge with all the props and special effects. And I remember it just being like a spectacle. And the Radio City Music Hall stage is enormous, and they had a lot of stuff to fill that stage. So it was really, really cool. Deep Purple. March 25th, 85, also in Meadowlands Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey. That was, of course, the Perfect Strangers tour. Girls' School opening up. My first time seeing Purple. Of course, was a huge Blackmore fan. So for me, that was pretty intense. Even though I was doing all sorts of things on the way to the show that day, that left me in a great state of mind. But it was still very cool. Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force in Tallis. All right, July 1985 at the Beacon Theater. That was pretty cool. All right, seeing Billy Sheehan and Tallis, right? We're totally an underground band at the time. Billy Sheehan wasn't really the name he is today, so that was kind of neat. Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, Mid-Hudson Civic Center, Poughkeepsie, New York, November 19th, 1985, which was a time when Stevie was pretty much kind of a mess, but he was awesome. And I remember he was just like up there sweating profusely and not really talking much, in between songs or anything like that. Just playing his ass off. Just really, really cool. What else we got here? Wasp, Metallica, and Armored Saint, also at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, January 1985, January 23rd, 1985. A great show. Armored Saint coming out there with all the armor on, right? They used that very early in their career. Wasp put out all the tricks, man. They had the stage show going and all that kind of crap. And Metallica just coming out there in, jeans and leather and just straightforward kicking ass, right? And I remember that being a night where there was a lot of drinking and pot smoking going on in that arena. Holy cow, cops were everywhere. But it was great. Great triple bill. What else we got here? What else? Triumph and White Lion, also at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center. Yngwie, Lita Ford, geez, all sorts of stuff. Dokken, Judas Priest. More Metallica. God, I saw Metallica so many times. It's unbelievable back in those days. Another Black Sabbath show. Black Sabbath, Wasp, and Anthrax at the Meadowlands Arena, March 24th, 1986. This was, of course, the 7-star tour. With Glenn Hughes. It's probably one of, it's funny, I don't normally mention this one when people ask me what are some of the worst concerts you've ever seen. And I keep forgetting that I need to because it's Sabbath and I love them, but man, they just were not good that night. And specifically Glenn Hughes was just terrible. And I remember being so psyched to see that show because I love the 7-star album. And I've always been a big Glenn Hughes fan, and he just could not sing at all. Man, he was up there straining and squawking and gravelly and just, my God, what happened? And of course, he was off the tour and out of the band shortly thereafter. And that, Wasp weren't even that good that night. And I thought Anthrax was the best band that whole night. And there was hardly anybody in the audience. I mean, I think that place holds 15 or 18,000. If there were 10, it was lucky. What else we got here? How about Ozzy and Metallica at the Meadowlands, April 1986? Sorry, but Metallica completely blew Ozzy off the stage that night. That was probably one of the best opening acts I had ever seen as far as the power of their performance. Metallica was on top of the world, and their performance showed it, and people were just going berserk at that show. And I just remember walking out, and Ozzy was very good, and the band were very good. This was kind of Jakey Lee's last go-around with the band, but man, it's it was just no comparison. No comparison. What else? Bon Jovi and Keel, Nassau Coliseum, Long Island, New York, August 9th, 1987. Memorable for a couple things. So my brother and I each took our girlfriends at the time, and I remember going to that show, and 90% of the people in the audience were women or girls. And in between every song, all you could hear was screaming women. Every time, Bon Jovi got up to the microphone to say something, people would scream, or the women would scream. Every time Richie Sambora played a guitar solo, the women would scream. I remember walking out of that show, all I can think of is women screaming. I couldn't tell you how good the band was or anything like that. Ron Keel, or the band Keel, opened up. All I remember is chicks screaming nonstop. That's all it was. It's like, my God. It's like craziness. What else we got here? I got what was this? The Metal Mania Tour, Anthrax. I believe this is Anthrax, Halloween, and Celtic Frost at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in 1987. All right, and we got signed by a couple of guys from, I believe that was Halloween. What else? They did a similar show with Grim Reaper, Armored Satan, Halloween, and I got some more signatures here. I believe that's some of the guys from Grim Reaper signing that. What else? One of the worst shows I ever saw, Rat and Poison, also at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, March 1987. A drunken Rat, they were a mess. They played sloppy as hell, and Poison just sucked because I just never liked them. I thought they were terrible. What else we got here? Twisted Sister, TNT, Great White. All right, so right around this time, I started hanging out a lot in Long Island because my girlfriend at the time lived there, and I spent a lot of time there. And there was a really cool place called Sundance, okay, which was in Bayshore, Long Island. Really cool rock club, and they had metal acts there every weekend. I practically lived at this place. And we would go like early evening, and the shows would go till like 2, 3 in the morning. It was ridiculous. And we would go, and we would just drink a shitload of beer and literally just line beers up along the stage and just go get annihilated and just have a great time and mosh and everything. I mean, here we got Anthrax and Metal Church, Overkill, Testament, my God, King Diamond, Trouble. I would go every weekend. I've got so many. What else we got from that place? Overkill, Hades, Warlock, DRI, Death, Holy Terror. I got a funny story from that show. So at that show, that was November 26, 1988. So it's DRI, Death, and Holy Terror. Kind of a weird mix of bands. You got some hardcore and death metal, and it was my one and only time seeing Death, which was really cool. But during the DRI set, everybody's moshing and going crazy. And the 6'6" buddy was there, and he was getting all into it. We were down front in the mosh pit, and he decides to climb up on stage and stage dive. So, of course, he's like 6'6", like 250 pounds or whatever. He leaps off the stage, hoping to be caught, and everybody looks up. They see this big guy come flying overhead, and everybody moves out of the way. Splat! Okay, he gets up. He's like, oh, my God, why didn't they catch me? I'm like, dude, look at the size of you, So he was never the same after that. I wouldn't advise if someone that big doing that because people don't want to have a 6'6", 250-pound guy landing on their head, right? What else we got here? Motley Crue and Whitesnake, Nassau Coliseum, August 22nd, 1987. The only reason I went to this show, because by the time I hated Motley Crue, but I wanted to see Whitesnake, because Whitesnake, the 87 album, obviously, huge at the time. I thought Whitesnake completely blew Motley Crue off the face of the earth. Whitesnake were phenomenal that night. Phenomenal. What else we got here? Gary Moore at the Chance, August 28, 1987. Another one of those drunken evenings. I remember my girlfriend at the time got really, really wasted, and I think she spent half the night out in the car. All right? I had to keep kind of going back and forth. But whatever. It is what it is. Michael Schenker, Macaulay Schenker Group at the Chance, November 1987. What else? Oh, man, so many good shows. So many good shows. How about Megadeth and Sabotage at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York? All right, January 1988. Right, notable for my buddy who I went to school with, grew up with, Chris Caffrey. His first live appearance in the Hudson Valley with Sabotage. Right, he was brought on board as a rhythm guitar player and part-time keyboard player. He's up there. It was very cool to see him up on stage for the first time in like a known band. And then, of course, you had Megadeth on the So Far So Good So What tour with Mr. Jeff Young on lead guitar. And I remember just the mosh pit was incredible that night. People just going nuts. Both bands were just firing on all cylinders. Awesome show. How about Manowar, February 14th, 1988. Probably the loudest show I've ever seen in my life. Well, maybe not the loudest. Top 3 easily. There's another one that's louder than that. What else we got here? Here's a good one. White Lion, March 88 at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, with Skid Row opening up before Skid Row had a record contract. Pretty cool, right? I remember they were very good. And I was thinking, wow, who's this band, Skid Row? Never heard. All of a sudden, like a year or two later, they're like, everybody knows who they are. Voivod, Testament, Violence at Showcase in Long Island. King Diamond, Flotsam and Jetsam. Slayer at the Felt Forum in New York City. pretty bizarre show, man. It was great because, of course, you know, the Rain and Blood album was out. This was 1988, August 31st. And I remember, you know, I was living at the time, I was living out in Long Island for a little bit. And I remember like taking the train in and getting off the train station, coming up out of the subway station in Penn Station and walking outside. And there's like hundreds of cops all surrounding the Felt Forum because they were probably like thinking, we got the most dangerous band on the planet, right? Playing tonight, we better be safe here, and you know, because people were looking to go and have a good, rowdy, violent time, right? But thankfully, it didn't get too out of control. There was a point during Danzig opened up, and there was a point during Danzig's set where Glenn was like, "Guys, you need to kind of move back," because everybody was pressing up against the barricade, and I'm sure they were getting worried about by the time when Slayer came on that barricade would be kaput and people would just be, you know, rushing the stage and stuff. Pretty nuts. Van Halen's "Monsters of Rock" at Giant Stadium. 1988, June 26th. So that was Scorpions and Metallica and Dokken, Kingdom Come, and Van Halen. I thought Metallica and the Scorpions kind of stole that whole show, man. They were awesome. Really, really good. This is another funny drunken story. Rolling Stones and Living Colour at Shea Stadium, October 10th, 1989. At the time, I could give a shit about the Rolling Stones. I had no interest in them, and I really didn't start to appreciate the Stones till about 10 or 15 years after that. I always disliked them when I was growing up. So I went with, I was working out in Port Jefferson, New York, out in Long Island for that year, and a bunch of the guys that I worked with wanted to go to the Stones show. So I was like, "You want to go?" I'm like, fuck it, I'll go. Right? So we go, and we're driving out from Port Jeff all the way to New Jersey, right? I mean, to Shea Stadium, which is where the Mets used to play, to Queens. And we were drinking the whole time there. So I remember, not very proud of the story, but I remember we're stuck in traffic on like, was it the LIE or the Grand Central? I think it was on the Grand Central. And I had to pee so bad. So bad. We were stuck in like stop and go traffic. I literally just got out of the car and peed right there in traffic. I was like, I know, I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it, but I had to go. And I remember this, we get to the show, and again, I didn't have any interest in the band at all. I just wanted to be there. And I remember I was so drunk that I went up to go to the bathroom, and I totally forgot where we were sitting. And I didn't bother to look. I had my ticket on me. I didn't bother to look at the ticket. So I'm just wandering around, right? And at one point, I go into one of the bathrooms. I go to take a leak, and I run into a guy I went to college with. And I'm like, holy crap, I hadn't seen him in, you know, like a year. And I was like, oh, so I'm catching up with him. And he's like, where are you sitting? I'm like, I don't know. And I actually did not find, hi Tyler, I actually did not find my seat till like the last half hour of the show. And so I couldn't even tell you how the show was. So that's why I'm excited. Well, I have a ticket for the Stones for this upcoming tour as soon as Mick gets healthy and they reschedule it. But I wanted to go see them at least one more time and to actually experience it, right? So what else we got here? God, there's so much stuff, guys. I could probably do part 2 of the show. Oh, here's another one. Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jeff Beck, Madison Square Garden, November 11, 1989. Just like a few months before Stevie's tragic plane crash. It was just awesome to see the two of these guys together. You know, Jeff Beck opened up, which is kind of strange, right? Because Jeff Beck, the legend, back after, you know, a triumphant return with the Guitar Shop, played a great set of music. Stevie came out. Stevie was freshly sober. And you could tell he was feeling good. He was talking very inspirational in between each of the songs. And then Jeff came out. They did an encore together. It was awesome. And then, you know, before you know it, Stevie's gone. So kind of, you know, really sad. All sorts of stuff, guys. That's like kind of like a part. Why don't we do a part 1 of this? And maybe we'll revisit this if you guys like this. So that's... yeah, let's do that. So we'll stop around 1990. Okay, if you guys really like this and you want to see part 2, and I'll do like the rest of the 90s and on, I'm more than happy to, because I think this was fun for me, kind of revisiting. And then, you know, what you got in the 90s and on is a lot of prog stuff, a lot of jazz stuff, and a lot of really different types of things. And then as the 2000s come around, a lot of really cool and crazy shows, extreme metal and stuff like that. So I got a lot of funny tales to tell about, you know, going to death metal and black metal shows and things like that. So some fun stuff, right? Fun stuff. So if you want to see a part 2, let me know. I'll gladly do it, probably next week. But this is on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're here on the mighty YouTube, all sorts of stuff coming up. So hope you enjoyed this rant on my concert experiences, and we'll talk to you real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.